Everything you're about to hear is for entertainment purposes only. The upcoming conversations are nothing more than the ridiculous opinions of a dropout and a guy dumb enough to be friends with him. Listen, have some fun, but don't ever do, believe, or promote anything they say. They're idiots.
Guys, hold up. You should know, this ain't for everybody. Welcome to Savagely Loud. Oh, hey, what's happening, people? Welcome back to the show. I'm glad to be back with you. I'm glad you're back with us. Well, I'm glad you're back with me because I'm solo. I'm flying solo. My co-host, Mikey is feeling a little bit under the weather, so he's taking some time off to get himself back to champion status, and then we'll be back together, hitting it as hard as we possibly can. Guys, I gotta say, I love that intro. That intro is one of those fucking things that just fires me up. I love that intro. I guess it's, you know, maybe I like hearing myself talk. Maybe I like hearing bombs explode. Maybe I hear like hearing guns shoot. I don't know. Maybe I like hearing it all at the same time, but it is fucking, that shit's a banger in my brain, guys. So typically now, this is about the time of the show where we do those pleasantries. You know, the fucking pleasantries. Everybody does them. You know, we got to get through, hey, how was your week, buddy? Like we don't talk at all. Guys, instead of doing the pleasantries, because, dude, we're all up to speed at this point. You know my week. My week consisted of, while I was busting my ass, making some money, doing some shit, I helped some people, I posted some videos, and I argued with some people. That's the fucking way my weeks go. But instead of doing all of that, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the shit behind me, because I get questions about it. So this is, you know, the shit you see behind me. That's all masking paper. It's all getting laid out to do the art for the backdrop for the podcast. And you're going to get to go along for the ride because, well, frankly, this shit's going to take a while. I do a lot of stuff, so I have to kind of, you know, work this art into the background of what I do. So as we go on through the show, you'll see the progress happening in the wall. And basically what we're thinking is, or what I'm thinking is, we're going to do some brick wall action and then a blow a hole like a bomb exploded or some shit. Some American flag action in the back faded out there with maybe a Statue of Liberty holding a fucking torch and all sorts of shit going on. It's going to be fucking radical, but you're going to get to see it. So guys, just stick with me, bear with me most importantly, because I know that shit's ugly. That doesn't bother me anybody more than it bothers me. So just, you know, take it in and you know, just kind of go with us here. So now moving on. This is about the time of the show. And you know what? Let me interject myself. I'm so used to doing the fucking show solo. I did shows solo for years before this. And now I've done a couple of episodes. I've done some meetings. I've done some talkings with my co-host. And now I'm gotten used to being a co-host. And now it feels like I'm just chatterboxing, just being alone. I don't have anybody to banter off of. So motherfucker, get better soon, because I need your ass here. But now is when so we always talk about real shit, right? We talk about the real topics of the real world, and we talk about them in ways that we can circle back to a lesson, even if it's only a lesson that we can take internally away from this subject matter and apply to our lives and help us out, right? This is typically, this is where we do the Daily Drag. Now, the Daily Drag is one of Mikey's segments. It's something simple that, you know, might drive you crazy in the moment, but you kind of look back and laugh. And, you know, he's not here, but we're going to do it anyway, because I got one for you. And I think you're going to be able to relate. My bed frame is constructed of steel because I love steel. I like wood, but I love steel. So I have this fucking cool bed frame, and it's got this one stanchion. That's one of the upright arms that holds it up off the floor. It's got one of these one stanchions that I never fail to get out of bed and stub my fucking toe out. It seems like every fucking time. I've done all the tips, all the tricks. I've wrapped a towel around it. I put that, you know, the swim pool noodle thing around. No matter what, I'm always banging my fucking foot on this. And it happened to me the other day. I got out of bed in the morning, and I wasn't having a great night's sleep. I wasn't having a great morning waking up. Got out and whammo, fucking kicked that motherfucker. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to burn it down. I'm going to burn the whole fucking house down. Maybe I'll get everybody out of it first, but I am that done today. 5 minutes later, I'm like, I got to just decompress a second. So I go and I start brushing my teeth. And I'm running a brush through my beard, and I got the local news playing on the phone on my, in the morning. And this story came up that just made me second guess things. It wasn't hugely gravitational. We're not going to get into it, but it just gave me a twist in perspective. And I started laughing about just stubbing my toe all the time. I just, and that's what it is. I think that's a daily drag, like something that happens repeatedly. It irritates the shit out of you. But at the end of the day, you can get to laughing about it. So that's mine. We're going to move on from there because, let's face it, there's nobody fucking here to bounce this shit off of. But because of that, I figured that this might be a good time to just let you in on who the fuck I am. Who the hell is Cliff? Let's talk about who the hell is Cliff and why you should or maybe you shouldn't listen to me. Maybe it's all bullshit. Maybe the whole world is all bullshit and you shouldn't listen to anybody. There's always that option too. We're that kind of people. Maybe that's an option. But so getting into it, guys, the reason I figured that this would be a good thing to kind of introduce you to me, for the people that don't know me, which is probably most of you at this point, I've lived through some shit and I have some perspectives that differ. They alter the reality sometimes for the people that I associate with, the people I talk to. And I've been told time and time again that I should write a book or do a podcast or a live show or whatever, So I'm doing things like that. I am currently writing a book. It's called What Broke Me, Built Me. And we'll get into the premise of that. I'm currently doing this fucking podcast with my boy Mikey, who is just not here. But he will be soon. But I'm doing all this kind of shit. And the reason I'm doing all this kind of shit is because I truly believe, after having metamorphosized my life multiple times, and I have had to do that, I truly believe that everybody is here for a fucking reason. As cliche and as stupid and as fucking, as Etsy as that kind of sounds, everybody really is here for a reason. And some of our reasons are just a little bit harder to find than others. And I think my reason here is to be the motherfucker that when I think back when I was a little kid and I looked up at any time and I wanted to see somebody there, nobody was ever there. So maybe it's my purpose to be that guy. Be the guy that wasn't there for me or kids like me. Maybe I can take all the shit that I've done and lived through, use the notes that I've taken from it all the way through, and maybe help somebody else start living a little bit earlier than I did, because I didn't get to start living till I was half dead, and that's just no way to go about life. So getting into things, let's go all the way back, man. I was born in 82. I'm a fucking, I'm a dinosaur at this point, according to most people. But I was born in 82, and I was born in a place called Highland Park Hospital in Highland Park, Illinois. Highland Park, Illinois is an extremely affluent area. It's part of the North Shore of Illinois. It's what's called the North Shore. It consists of towns like Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, Highland Park, Wilmette, Winnetka, Glencoe, and the list goes on. And now there's these towns are extremely affluent, and Kenilworth is in there, which has been voted multiple times, between the third and first richest community in America. So that's where I was born. That's not where I lived. That's where I was born. Where I lived was a very, very different story. Where I lived was a dumpy fucking white trash little town called Antioch. And I know I'm going to catch some shit from my friends that live in fucking Antioch, but we all just got to embrace reality, because that is what my shit is all about. Embracing reality to alter your perspective. And the reality is Antioch is a dumpy redneck shithole. Still to this day. They're trying to build it up, but it's just never going to be anything other than that. Now, I lived there at a place called Timberlake Park. That was my uncle's campground. He managed it or ran it or half owned it. I don't know. I think 3 lawyers owned it, but it was a place called Timberlake Park, and it was at a place. It was an intersection at 173 and Route 45. Had 86 acres, and it was a campground. but it was a permanent campground. So a lot of the things were park models, and park models, if you ever see them, they're like the double wides that you got to take the wheels off of, and they look kind of like a house, but not a house. There was a lot of those in there. Well, my first bedroom was a closet that my dad had gutted in one of those things, okay, in one of those park models, one of those double wides. And he used a fucking drop cord flashlight out of my uncle's barn so that it had a light in it. That was my first bedroom. That was where my crib was. That was the start of Clifford Moore. It's humble, to say the least, okay? So as we went on, you know, like mom and dad got their shit together a little bit more, we ended up getting a house in a place called Wildwood. And I grew up in Wildwood for 20 years of my life, 23 years actually, I think. But I was in Wildwood for that whole time. And Wildwood is one of these places that, well, now it's kind of being yuppified. It's kind of being rebuilt to be something it never was, but kind of maybe probably should be. Because when I was there, when I lived there, when all me and my people grew up, and I know a lot of motherfuckers that are going to listen to this that lived in that time in that town are going to tell you the same thing. Wildwood was a great looking place on the outside, but there was a lot of houses in that neighborhood that had some very extreme parenting problems happening, to the detriment of a good majority of the children in the neighborhood. When I was growing up, I knew I could just ride my bike by or walk by houses, and I just knew what was going on in my house was going on in that house, and those houses were fucking everywhere. And later on, it would end up being confirmed by a lot of the people that I would later meet, come in contact with, and associate with, and become friends with. They would confirm these stories that I thought, like, dude, I fucking knew that you were getting something going on in that fucking house. Every time I came by, I could just feel it, because there's something in people that have really, truly lived through some shit. You just pick it out. You can smell it, you can taste it, you can feel it in the air. It just grabs your throat and starts suffocating you. It's this fucking aura about abuse that everybody that's ever been abused can fucking feel immediately. Whether it's you're abusive and you run up against them, they can walk by you and they can smell it on you. If it's your house, if it's something happened in your car, it's just something we have in us. But Wildwood was this great looking place on the outside, but there was so many of us that had so many troubles. The problem with that is that we all went to school with the people that didn't have any troubles. The kids that we went to school with were programmed as normal children. You know, if you go into class and somebody's beat up and bloodied up or bruised up or super hyper awkward or doesn't want to associate with people, you avoid them. That's what you do. Those people are fucking crazy. Those people are fucking weird. Those people are no good, and you need to avoid them people. Well, that's how a lot of people like me's lives went in school. I got avoided like a motherfucker because my dad kicked the shit out of me at all fucking times. Before I was 10 years old, I had already multiple times slept in garbage cans out inside of the garage and a dumpster behind a local liquor store because I didn't want to go home, because I knew if I went home, I was just going to get fucking hell handed to me on a platter over and over and over again. This is the house I lived in. So every day of my life at home was a war. At school, you might think that that could be my reprieve, but it didn't become that. It actually became yet another war zone for me, because I was getting hell at home, and then I would go to school and I would get ridiculed because I didn't have the cool clothes. I didn't have the fucking, I didn't know any of the music that people were listening to. Like, somebody mentioned Nirvana to me, and they were like the biggest band in the fucking world. And I'd never heard of them. I had only heard of the oldies, and I had only heard of Alabama. Like, my dad was an Alabama-holic. Like, that's what the motherfucker listened to, is Alabama. But I didn't know any of this shit. So these people, instead of, kind of embracing me and being like, hey, you don't understand, here you go, they did the same shit. They shunned me. They fucking turned their back on me. They ridiculed me. They made fun of me. This happened for years and years and years. Now imagine what might happen in the mind of a person who grows up in a house that has zero love. In fact, grows up in a house where the two people, being your mother and your father, that are supposed to love you the most, actually don't. And in fact, for all intents and purposes, it would seem as though it's not that they don't love you. It's that they actually actively hate you, and they're trying to get you to understand the level in which their hatred seeds. So you have this mind that is just bubbling over with anger and resentment and confusion and hurt and pain. That's when it started turning for me. It really, my brain, like I look back and I can kind of stage this out when I look at it. Obviously back then I had no idea. I was a child. I don't know how to process this shit. But I look back, and that was really when my mind started shifting. Is the more I got bullied at school, the more I got ridiculed at school, the more I would get it at home, and it just seemed like this snowballing mess of frustration, confusion, and pain. And then I had to have I got talked to by teachers early on about, because I didn't shower because my parents didn't make me shower or bathe. It basically made people's fucking eyes bleed when I walked by, because I didn't understand that you had to shower. I didn't understand you had to brush your teeth. I didn't understand any of this shit. All I knew of life was that you woke up in the morning to somebody kicking you in the feet and screaming at you, and you got kicked down the fucking stairs until you got your shit ready and you got the fuck out of the house. When you came back to the house, you prepared for that same kind of fucking treatment, but maybe a little worse, because maybe dad was awake more now, or maybe he was sleepy after the hard day and he really wanted to fucking get it out. This is the life I lived. So with these people, when I went to school, I would expect this reprieve, and I didn't get it. I didn't get my reprieve at home. I didn't get the love at home. So I went on to really just fall off. I said, you know what? If the fucking world and God is going to hate me, then I'm going to show the world and God how much I can fucking hate it back. And then I was accepted. I finally found acceptance in this world where my parents didn't accept me, my fucking school, nobody at my school accepted me. I didn't have any friends. They didn't accept me. All I had was fucking bullies all the time. The white boys, they accepted me. The white guys, the white boys, they came along. I'm not going to name any of the cliques, but they came along and they said, you know what? You're fucking white. You're my brother, and we got to fix your situation. They came along and they fucking basically rescued me from the hell that I lived in every single day. Now, don't turn this shit off yet. I know you're getting all antsy hearing this shit. Don't turn it off yet. They accepted me in a way that I had only seen other cultures accept themselves. When I looked over across, the Middle Easterners, I saw no matter what happened, if there was two Middle Easterners and anybody else, those two Middle Easterners might fight it out afterwards, but they're going to fuck that other guy up. You know what I mean? They're going to band together and they're going to fuck that other guy up. That happened in the black culture. That happened in the brown culture, the yellow culture, the green culture, all the different color cultures. Well, I had finally found that. I found this loyalty. I found this camaraderie. So I dove in. And mind you, I'm super young. I'm around 10 at this point when I start really accepting these people that are talking to me. And also too, you have to also remember that we didn't have the fucking internet. So this wasn't chat room type shit. Like, I had to come in contact with these people. So I got, as a child, I got unraveled in their cult of personality. They were standing in front of me, being everything I wanted to be. They were fucking cool. They seemed to have their shit together. They were badasses. They wouldn't take no shit, blah, 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 blah. So as I dive into this, I become the world's biggest fucking hate monger. I made an active decision with my life that I was going to die for this cause. My race was my religion and my skin was my uniform. I shall die for this religion. So I studied and I researched and I talked and I spoke 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 and I fucking tried and tried and tried and tried and tried until I finally got somebody to listen to me. Then I got another person to listen to me. Then I got another person to listen to me. And then the shit started taking off. And by the time I was 15, I was CO of a fucking clique. And again, I'm not naming any of these things because some of these are still active and I don't need any of that. But as I became this fucking hate monger, at the same time, I shunned all of society, regular, normal society. I didn't take part in things like hip hop music. I didn't start listening to hip hop until 2001-ish, 2000-ish. No. Maybe 98, because I was working at Jiffy Lube, and that was about the time that I would just started opening up to black music, because I refused to listen to it. It was black culture, it was black music. Every time I listened to it, it promoted it. Every time anybody bought it, it promoted it. Like I was that hardcore about the shit. I wouldn't even listen to the music. So anyway, as I go on, I get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And pretty soon I find myself in a situation where I'm consumed fully, 100% with hate. That's my only goal in life, is to hate. It's my only task in life, is to hate. It's my only responsibility, is to hate. I wake up every single morning consumed with hatred. I don't even think about breakfast before I think about people hanging. I think about how I'm going to get more and more people on our side to stand up for what is right and blah, 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 blah. 1488, the whole gig. All before breakfast, every single day. I know what it's like to be consumed by hate, fully and completely to your soul, consumed by hate. 2005. Now, that's when I had my daughter. But well before that, I had to go through my transitions of life where things had to change. I was getting into drugs now. At the same time, and here's what you'll find is a huge thing in white culture, white boy culture, racist, Nazi, whatever the fuck you want to call it, skinhead culture. You're going to find this a lot. You're going to find a lot of coked up skinheads pissing and moaning about how drug use is for hard R's, if you get what I'm saying. I was deep, getting deep and deeper into coke. I started out smoking fucking weed, and that's fine. Smoking weed, I'm to this day a marijuana advocate. Well, cannabis, marijuana isn't even actually what it is, but anyway, different show. But started smoking weed, and then I started drinking. Drinking wasn't for me. I'm just not into the booze. I've been drunk plenty of fucking times. I'm just not into the booze. But I knew a guy that was seeming to make some money, and he offered me an opportunity to make that money. I said, well, what the fuck do you need? And he's like, well, you just gotta sell this shit here. And it was coke. I was like, well, I never done this shit. And he's like, good, don't ever do it. He's like, you'll make a lot of fucking money if you don't ever do it. So I started selling blow, because you know what? I needed fucking money. I needed a change. I needed something. Started selling blow, and I was making a lot of fucking money, man. I'm not even gonna lie. I was making a lot of money. And then I started doing it. It started out like I did a couple of fucking lines at my buddy's house with him when he bought it, and it didn't do shit. And I did another one. Didn't do shit. Next thing you know, I'm like, I want to do another one. Well, in the next 2.5 years, I spent about $250,000 on that fucking habit. I had started out selling it and then became the cliche. I became that guy. I started selling it and I had a lot of customers. I wasn't using it, so I was making a lot of money. And I started using it, and the money I was making started dwindling. Then my customers started dwindling because I didn't have the stock to provide their fucking service for them. Next thing you know, I was literally my only customer. I was scrounging and stealing and borrowing and doing everything I had to do to get the money to get my brick so that I could afford to sell myself some coke. I was that guy. I have long since not been that guy. I actually quit cold turkey. I woke up one morning and I was chopping my lines. So the way my life worked is I would wake up in the morning, and before I even opened my eyes, I slept in a twin mattress, and next to me was built-ins that were dressers, Well, one of the dressers was missing, and I had an old TV that I put in there that was next to the bed, and I put my bed up against the wall. And then that was like my nightstand. My little cubbyhole nightstand was the top of this TV. Well, on the top of this TV, I had a saucer, like a coffee saucer, and that had my blow on it all the time, my Coke. And before I would even open my eyes, when I'd wake up in the morning, I would start chopping my lines. I would just reach over and I'd grab my blades and I'd fucking start chopping my lines. I like to use 2 blades at a time because you could chop it faster. And I made the decision right there, and I was like, you know what? This is going to be the last fucking time I do this. This is going to be the last time I ever have to do this. I got to get the fuck out of this because, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I quit cold turkey. Leading up to that decision was not a pretty fucking sight, because not too long before that, I found myself on the floor of a fucking crack house looking at shitbags walking around me as I fucking was ODing, because we tried to do, if you've ever seen the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, it's all about George Young and the coke trade coming into the 80s and whatnot. Well, in the movie, they mentioned this thing called the 10-10 challenge. And well, they don't say it's the 10-10 challenge. It's 10 grams in 10 minutes. We called it the 10-10 challenge. It's snorting 10 grams of coke in 10 minutes. Now, to put this into perspective for people that don't understand cocaine use, and terminology, a teener in my world, in my area, was 1.5 grams. So if you ever hear a T or a teener, that was 1.5 grams of coke. Most people would buy a teener to party with their friend on a Friday night. Okay, an 8-ball was 3 grams. That was 2 teeners, was an 8-ball in my area. I know they're 3.5 in some other places, and I have actually seen that they're 2.5 in other places, but there were 3 gram 8-balls in my place. That was 3 grams of coke. Most people would buy an 8-ball if they were going out Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. I was selling myself 8-balls for $40, and I was spending $1,000 a week, so that tells you how much coke that I ended up doing. So I had been so into the game that I was like, fuck it, I can handle this challenge. So we busted out 10 grams, all of us. Boom, 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 boom. They were Sharpie markers. And I got 9 down. And then my fucking eye, my left eye just went fucking bloodshot as shit, like somebody just dyed it. And I just leaned back and hit the fucking floor and watched everybody walk around. Nobody gave a fuck. I don't even think it startled anybody. So in that moment, I'm watching these shitbags just walk around me, and I'm thinking like, I'm you guys, and you guys are me, and I can't have that. So I've got to do some shit to change this. So then, fast forward, we get to my, my TV fucking, my morning chop story, right? But I made that decision to go cold turkey. This is the last fucking time I'm ever doing this. And I had done Blow a couple of years later, literally a couple of years later. But in that moment, I did quit. I went through all the fucking withdrawals. I went through all that shit myself because I needed to do this. I know from my own life and the situations that I was handed and the situations that I've gotten myself into, that the hard route was always the best route. At the end of the hardest path was the biggest payoff. And I'd also seen many of my friends go into their clinics and go into their rehabs, and they bounce right back out. I just knew that whatever was about to happen to me, I was going to have to go it alone, and I was just going to fucking have to get through it. So what I did is I deleted all my fucking plugs numbers out of my phone, all my dealers' numbers out of my phone. I blocked a couple of other people that I did have access to in my phone, or they had access to me. I made it so I couldn't get it, basically. And I went radio dark. I didn't hang out with nobody. I didn't answer no calls, nothing. And I got through my shit the hard way, the way it's supposed to be fucking done. And that's the way I've done everything in life. The hard way is the way I stopped being a skinhead. You see, I know that word makes everybody really scared, skinhead, because it sounds really bad, because we've spent our life, especially as white people, being programmed to believe that that word is attached to the worst people on earth. And I really did think that. I got to starting to think that maybe maybe I wasn't totally right in my thinking. And then I got into, like I said, I got into some other drugs, but like I got into ecstasy, and that was a short-lived stint. I did a lot of it, but it was a short-lived stint. But ecstasy was really what allowed my fucking brain to open up enough to get this bulldozer-sized fucking rock out of the pathway of where I needed to go. And once I did that, then I really was able to access these thoughts that maybe everything I believed was wrong. Like, and I'm talking radical acceptance. Maybe everything is wrong. So I started trying to unlearn things. I figured, you know what? If I could learn it, I can unlearn it. And maybe life taught me this, but maybe it was just this part of life that taught me that. Maybe all of life isn't that. So maybe I'll take the lessons from that part of life and I'll go live this part of life over here and see if the lessons are different, see if the lessons maybe are more fun or find a little bit more happiness and love over there, But as I moved on, I had to unlearn all of everything I'd ever known that was programmed into me. And it was just nothing but validated every day of my life because I was so consumed by hate that everything I did was with that bias. I looked at everything through the scope of a bias. Like, I hate you, you can't do anything good. I hate you, you can't do anything good. Oh, I hate you, you can't do anything good. So in this process of unlearning everything I knew, I kind of engrossed myself in hip hop culture. Like I started, because that was the most accessible to me. I kind of dove into hip hop culture and I wanted to see what it was all about. And I found some really fucking kick-ass songs. I found some really kick-ass beats that, like, all the people I had known, they were going at this shit years and years and years, probably a decade before I was, maybe even more. And I'm just like, and I'm talking to people like, I'm like, dude, have you heard this fucking song? Like, yeah, dude, that was released like 15 years ago. I'm like, wow, that's a fucking great song, But I started doing that. And then I started talking to more and more Black people. And I started talking to more and more Black grandmothers. That's where I really learned a lot of humanity, is just talking to Black grandmothers. Now, I'm not talking about that fucking stereotypical Big Mama bullshit where she's at Walmart screaming, like the ones you see on the fucking news all the time. I'm talking about the Black grandmothers that have gone through it. Like, they've lived through it. They've done some shit, accomplished some shit, all in the fucking face of this massive amounts of adversity that was placed upon them in their time that was actually there, not like modern times where it's really not, but people have to believe it is. Different fucking story. And that goes for everybody. It's not a fucking race thing. But in talking to them, I started learning the humane side. I started actually learning about how bad it was in my house, in my life, growing up. Guys, I know I say I got my ass handed to me all the time, like I really did. Like, let me give you a fucking story. And it's not one that I hide. It's not one that I love telling, but it's not one that I hide. But I'll give you a story to set the tone of where my house was, like in the scheme of what created me. When I was approaching 10 years old, now, mind you, let me preface this. I have a sister who is 10 years older than I am. I'm 42 currently. She's 52. I don't know where the fuck she's at. Wisconsin basically stole her from me. That's a weird fucking scenario we can get into later, but she's 10 years older than me, but she's mentally retarded, mentally handicapped in the medical sense of the word. When you hear me say retarded, it's not derogatory. It's how we grew up with my sister being of that condition. That's how we grew up talking about it. But she was special needs, handicapped, mentally handicapped. I don't know, whatever you want me to fucking say, but that's what it was. So she was perpetually a very slow 12-year-old. So I basically had to, in large part, raise her and raise myself and try to mitigate the damage being created around the house by my mom and my dad. And it was, my dad was like a fucking Tasmanian devil, and my mom's damage was more so she just didn't stop it. And then she kind of started, she started stealing the money in the background. So, they never had any money and it made everything worse. But anyway, one night I heard some fucking ruckus coming down from the living room. And so I came down from my bedroom. My bedroom was upstairs, and you came down the stairs, went straight down the stairs, and at the end of the stairs, you 90 degreed into the kitchen, and then another 90 degree, and we had a galley kitchen. It was more like a hallway than a fucking big kitchen. Countertops and stoves and shit on each side, and then there was a doorway. The whole thing was about 12 feet long, and then it was the living room. I walked down the stairs, came through the kitchen, and just in time to hear my sister start talking about how she was going to blow her fucking brains out. I'm just going to fucking shoot myself. I'm going to kill myself. I'm fucking done dealing with you. I'm not listening. I'm blah, 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 blah. My dad disappeared in that moment. He fucking bolted right by me and up the stairs where his bedroom was. Now, I was like, well, that motherfucker didn't want to hear none of that shit. Holy shit. Like, you got him to go away fast. Next thing you know, he was coming down the stairs with his gun. And he was coming down the stairs with his gun. Now, this gun wasn't anything special. This gun was a Ruger Mark II. It was polished stainless steel, 4-inch barrel, and it had a ridiculously large red dot scope on the top of it. I remember it very, very vividly. He came down with this gun and his prized possession, and he threw it in her lap. And he said, stop fucking talking your bullshit and fucking do it. If you're going to fucking sit here and make me listen to it, you're going to fucking do it. Obviously, at that moment, Tammy, which is my sister, started losing her fucking shit. Like just breaking down and bawling out, like she was kind of playing that badass in the beginning, but now she's a full-on blubbering mess. So I was like, well, yeah, fucking dude proved a point there, right? You know, like, okay. And that shows you how hard I was already at that point. I'm like, all right, fucking dude proved his point, okay? And I was kind of giggling about it. Next thing you know, I hear, well, if you're not going to fucking do it, because he had to argue with her, pick up the fucking gun, and she would not touch the fucking thing. So next thing you know, I hear, well, if you're not going to fucking do it, Chipper will help you. I was Chipper. That was my nickname. Chipper, unless you're talking to my fucking Aunt Joni, then it was Skip. But I was the third generation. So my dad was Hal. My grandpa was Cliff or fucking whatever the fuck his name was or whatever called him. And I was always Chipper. Next thing you know, I hear fucking, well, if you're not going to fucking do it, Chipper will help you. And I was like, okay, well, this just took a fucking turn. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on here, but I started losing my shit. I'm not going to fucking hide. I was like, dude, I don't want no part of this. And he made me pick that fucking gun up. And because the difference is if he told my sister to do something, he could push as hard as he fucking wanted to. And if she didn't do it, he didn't hit her. He told me one fucking time to do things, and then he started wailing. That was the difference between me and my sister. So in this moment, he's telling me to pick the fucking gun up. You're going to pick the fucking gun. Pick the fucking gun. Chipper, help you out. Help her out. Help your fucking sister out. He really wanted me to suicide this chick. And the problem with that was I didn't want to do it. Okay. But here's to expand on that. My sister abused me just every bit as much as my dad did. I kind of always chalked it up to her mental state. You know, she used to slam my fingers in doors and and close windows on my head and shit, like put my head out the window and close it. One time we went to the park, and that's why you'll never see me without a beard, because I had to get 28 stitches in my chin, because she's like, stand right here. And we went over the teeter-totter, and she jumped on the other side and fucking sent me flying, and she had a roll of paper towels. Like, this shit was all planned out. Yeah. So I was abused by her too. I was having to raise her. But I still didn't want to suicide this chick because I felt like she didn't understand. Like, she didn't understand the world that she was living in. She definitely didn't understand what was actually happening in that moment. And she didn't fucking deserve it. So I panicked and I dropped the gun, right? And now that put me in a fucking mental fuck show, because I just dropped Dad's gun. This is his prized possession. I just scratched the fucking finish on his gun, and now he's going to use that thing and just shoot me with it. So I fucking just bolted. I bolted up to my room. I was fucking panicking, and nothing worth talking about even came of it. But that's the world I lived in, okay? a world where your dad's going to make you suicide your sister and then beat your ass for fucking 2 days because you dropped his gun because you didn't want to. That's the world I lived in. But the bright side of this is I took the notes. I took the notes on the child abuse. I took the notes on sibling abuse. I took the notes on how teachers abused students. I took the notes on how students abused teachers and other students. I took the notes on how the systems abused all of us. I took the notes on drug addiction. I took the notes on fucking on wicked sexual shit. I took the notes on fucking everything. That's not to say that my entire life was spent knowing that I would eventually pull my head out of my ass and turn things around and try to start helping people. But I did have to get through my life. And in order to do that, I had to teach myself stuff. I had to be my rock. I had to be my go-to person for everything that I needed. So, you know, as I was a shitbag in school, I spent a lot of my school career in in-school suspension because I was a shitbag. Like I said, I was going to show the world and God how much I could hate it because it showed me that it did nothing but hate me. Well, in these in-school suspensions, I just used to read psychology books. I don't know who the fucking authors were. If it said anything about how the mind worked or how people thought about things or perceived things, I would read it. I'd fucking read it, and I would just try to figure out how to get into this headspace of accepting things as they were and then appreciating them. I'll give you a couple more examples because people like to hear these ones, two in particular. I get the belt, right? I got the belt all the time, you know, the belt. Wapow, 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 every fucking thing I did. So I got the belt so often that I actually mastered how to take the belt. I always had to drop them. I always had to do that shit. But I mastered how to kind of leave this behind and go somewhere here. And that's why I have an unhealthy obsession with Sully's yellow Porsche from fucking Commando, the movie Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That yellow Porsche is what I used to drive, or yellow Porsche is what I used to drive every time I was getting beat, every time I was getting hit with the belt. Every time that fucking whip with that belt would crack my ass, I would just grip that steering wheel tighter. I would take a fucking turn harder. I would shift it harder. I would gas harder. I would brake harder. I would do something. Every time I got hit, I would just disappear into that car, into the driving of that car. And that's what got me really heavily into fucking cars is, you know, and now I build them. But that's one of the things that got me really heavily into cars is the abuse. So there's a lesson, a perspective shift that you can take from that I can take from this, you can take from this, is not everything is always bad. It got me to be one of the best in the world at fixing and building cars. So I'll take that. The other story that people like to hear about is I was walking out, me and my dad, we were walking out of this store called Zayre's. It was a fucking weirdo fucking, you know, kind of catch-all store. But we were walking out of Zayre's, and I remember, or maybe it was, I'm trying to think of what town it was in, but I think it was in Waukegan, but I oftentimes get them mixed up. We were walking out of the store, and I saw this little redheaded kid down the fucking row, and he was getting his ass handed to him by his dad. And my dad was fucking yapping it up with one of the people from the fucking store or somebody he fucking saw in a parking lot or something. So we're walking really fucking slow. And I'm watching this little redheaded fucker catch this beating. And he wasn't taking it well. And it got to the point where I started getting really fucking mad. I started getting really mad at him for not being able to take this beating. Like, this is what we do. Like, some people have to get it, so some people can't get it. That's the moment that thought, that notion, that became fact in my brain. When I was watching that kid get beat in the parking lot by his dad, nobody giving a fuck, and he not handling it well, I knew that some people had to get it. And the people that had to get it because they were tough enough to get it. Because some people weren't tough enough to get it. So he had to be tough. So if you're going to be tough enough to get it, that means you got to learn to love it. That means you've got to learn to not fear it, not run from it, but actually run to it, because now it's noble. Now it's this overarching fucking responsibility to your life, a duty, a purpose is to take the beatings, because you know with every beating that you take, somebody else isn't taking one. That's the mindset you have to get into living this life that people like me have lived. I'm not the only one, and I'm definitely not the worst one, I can assure you. But we lived there, in that life. So you have to get into these headspaces. But in getting into these headspaces, it allows you to unlock compartments of your brain later on in life that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to. You look out over society, and most of these people that have never lived through anything real, they haven't unlocked those compartments. So a blessing in disguise is a life full of drug abuse, hate, addiction, fucking abuse. It's fear, pain, anxiety, fucking resentment, and change and growth and happiness and positivity, because everything has a balance. You start out bad, but you take the fucking notes on your way through and you use them to get good. And when you use them to get good and you get yourself good, then you fucking bring people with you, because you know what? I'm sorry, but fucking getting into heaven doesn't mean shit if I can't bring my friends with me. So it's that kind of thing. Once you get good, if you've truly beaten your demons, you bring other people with you. If you truly haven't beaten your demons, you will spend your life running from them. You'll spend your life in the addles of fucking addiction, and you'll find yourself in the fucking sewers of life if you don't deal with this shit. And I've dealt with this shit. I've dealt with the beatings. I've dealt with my dad trying to get me to suicide my sister. I've dealt with holding my mom's hand as she took her last breath and flatlined. I've dealt with all of this shit. And I've taken the notes. And I've become this person that sees life in a different way than I ever thought I might have, ever thought I would have, ever thought was even possible. Because now I've gotten through all this shit. I'm at 42 now, and I see life being this gigantically positive thing as long as you know how to look at it, because I have learned how to look at it. Some will see the glass, you know the thing. Some will see the glass half full. Some will see the glass half empty. Some will see the glass is full of piss. I just stopped looking for the glass. I don't want a glass of anything right now, so why the fuck am I hunting for the glass? I'm doing me, and I'm doing me at all fucking times. So in doing that, it's opened me up. It's allowed my brain to become freer, to access different talking points and different perspectives. And it's made me it's got me chomping at the bit to learn, understand what I don't understand, talk about what we don't talk about, what we can't talk about. It's everything in me. Everything that I have lived through is what's created the person that I am today, that is so interested in other people and the stories from other people. And that brings me to a really good point though, guys. I love hearing stories of triumph from people. I love hearing your guys' fucking stories of what you went through as a kid or a young adult even, or maybe even a full grown adult. I love hearing what you've gone through and what you did to beat it and where you became, what you became in the process and where you're at now. I fucking love hearing this shit. But here's the problem, guys. You know what I get a lot of the time when I get into these conversations with people is I say, tell me your pain. Tell me this. And they go, well, knowing what you lived through, I feel like I'd be shitting on your struggle, or I'd be disrespecting you to share my pain as if it was anything comparable. Guys, I want you to hear me as a person that has gone through all of this shit and 1,000 pages more of shit that we will eventually get into, and taken the notes. As a guy that spent the last fucking 15 years really consciously talking to people through their problems, stopping people fucking from committing suicide, pulling the knife out of their wrist, the gun out of their hand, pulling the bottle out of their fucking backpacks, pulling the fucking needle out of their arm. I've done all this shit. I've done all the talking. I've accessed everybody's dark sides. I understand things that a lot of people don't understand. Life, you have to understand, is beautiful if you know how to look at it. And we're back. I'm sorry I had to pause there. Life is beautiful if you know how to look at it. And the problem with that is the people that have their stories that they want to get out, like I'm talking about, they don't get them out. So nobody else hears your story because you're so worried about people like me thinking that your pain wasn't good enough to hear about. You're thinking that people like me are thinking that you're disrespecting our struggle by saying that you not getting that for whatever birthday is on the same level. You have to understand, guys, please take it from me again, having all of this criteria that we're talking about behind me. Tell your fucking story. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. It doesn't matter what they've been through. Tell your fucking story. Let's do this. If you're telling me your story, and you know mine, and you think mine is just leaps and bounds worse than yours, I consider my pain a 10. In your life, there is pain that you consider a 10. Respectively speaking, because I can't live your life and you cannot live mine, that means I can't feel your feelings and you can't feel my feelings completely. We have to understand that in that moment, your 10 is my 10. Respectively speaking, those problems are equal. We just have a different, we just have a different viewpoint of them. So please, guys, get this notion that you're disrespecting people by telling your story out of your head, and please tell your story, because you have to understand also, somebody out there needs to hear your story, and they need to hear it from you. That's a lot of the ways that people like me actually shift our lives around. People like me get into personal development, because that's the space I'm in, is personal development and helping people through their fucking trauma and all this other shit. I don't have a PhD. I'm a high school dropout for all intents and purposes. And if you put me on paper, I am fucking retarded. My bosses have told me this. You are fucking retarded on paper. If you're going to get that job, you have to get in there and talk to them. Guys, I'm telling you. Your story needs to be heard, because it's going to change lives, undoubtedly. And it is going to undoubtedly spark an interest in somebody that shares your story, or shares your vocal tone, or shares your vernacular, to get the fuck up and start speaking their story. And that's going to create this ripple effect through society. And it's all going to revolve back to you doing something noble, which is just sharing your story. However, before we move on, let's not get too carried away with this. Don't let yourself become the perpetual victim. Don't allow yourself to be like, oh my God, I've lived through so much. I don't know how I should be able to be dealing with this, blah, 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 blah. And then you become this fucking like this theoretical fucking victim, but you're on a higher fucking scale than everybody because don't let yourself do that. Deal with your demons, handle your trauma, fix your shit, move on. Help other people do the same, because you know that there was a little kid in your life, that wanted somebody to give them that information and they just weren't there. So be that person. That's what I try to do. Now, we could go on and on and on and on and on about a lot of different things about me and my life. But in closing, guys, I believe being a high school dropout, understanding what that did to my employment structure and my ability to find careers and opportunities. I understand that having lived through, being a fucking racist skinhead and having that trample any opportunities that I might have had. I understand that coming from an abusive household where abuse was coming from every single direction, that I've gotten these perspectives that most of the people with your PhDs and your fucking high school diplomas and your big smiles all the fucking time, they don't got. I'm not saying that their viewpoints or their perspectives are equal to mine or better than mine or worse than mine. They're just different. But my perspective is coming from a fucking person that lived through all of this shit that most people are told doesn't actually happen in real life. And I've taken the notes. Like I say, I love to say, I've taken the notes. I can show you the fucking notes if you just have a conversation with me. So guys, tune into the podcast all the fucking time. Every Wednesday, we're going to get into more and more and more of the shit that we're talking about. We're going to get into more and more of the reality of the world that affects us every single day. It puts weight on our brain. Even if it doesn't affect us directly, it puts weight on our brain. It puts weight on our soul. And we have to have these discussions to eliminate the confusion that drives this planet as it is, because I truly believe that's where we're at. This planet is driven by confusion. So if you're like me, if you've got a story, which you know you have a story, start talking, start getting it out there. If you're like me and you start seeing idiosyncrasies in the way things are working in society that don't quite make sense, start calling them out. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our kids. We owe it to the future generations to have the conversation, start having these really hard talks like we've had today. I've said some shit that I've been told for decades is very hard to hear. I've said some shit like that to you today, and you've made it through this long. So guys, I want to tell you, thank you so much for fucking sticking through this. Thank you so much for taking a little while, listening to what I believe my criteria is for how I do what I do and why I'm allowed to do it. Because let's face it, I only like to find solutions. I like to find solutions for what you've lived through and what you're dealing with mentally. I don't take that therapy approach. I don't want to sit you in my office every fucking day, keep you coming back, keep ripping off that fucking Band-Aid so that I can keep making money on this shit. Everything I do is fucking free. So come on, follow me on fucking Instagram and Facebook, Savagely Loud on Instagram and Facebook. You can go to my personal page on Facebook, which is Clifford Moore III. Also follow the podcast page. That's Savagely Loud Podcast on Instagram. You can follow my co-host as well, Mikey Wold, at Woldy2 on Instagram and Mikey Wold on Facebook. Both of our Instagram page links are on the Savagely Loud Podcast page that you can get to us from there. Guys, we're releasing every single Wednesday now. Every single Wednesday you can hear an episode from us, and it will be in us. He's going to be back real soon. Every single Wednesday we'll release a new episode. We'll do some teasers, and we're starting at this kind of new, fresh, very new, very fresh. We've got to figure out our groove together. We've got to figure out what the algorithm likes. We've got to figure out what the internet gods like. So thank you for fucking just kind of hanging with us, just sticking with us, being there with us, and kind of just tolerating our lack of polish for right now. But guys, in closing, we always like to bring this back up. Every episode, we start out, we get through those pleasantries, the niceties, we get through that daily grind, get us giggling a little bit, then we dive down into that shit. But we can't just dive down into this shit and then leave the show there and leave the listeners there, leave you guys fucking pissed off walking into work. No. So that's why we like to finish every show with a little segment we call Hopelessly Human. And it goes a little bit like...
People can be really rough. They can be quite tough. They can get in the way, but at the end of the day, some aren't only stupid, some are hopelessly human.
All right. And so I love that one too. And typically Hopelessly Human segment is Mikey's segment, which he does amazingly well. And he's very articulate. He reads into this stuff. I'm just not that. I'm not going to be able to do him justice, but I am going to fill in this so that we can leave this whole shit on a positive note. The whole idea behind Hopelessly Human is we talk a lot of shit about the darker sides of reality. So we're just going to finish every show with a pick-me-up to show you that humanity still exists within humans. So without further ado, guys, this is an article I stumbled across because of the headline. I saw the headline and it really attracted me because obviously, like a lot of you people, I've had some loved ones in my family, my friends, and my wife's family die of cancers of different kinds. So that has hit this house hard. So anytime I see something with cancer, I immediately at least give it the respect of giving it a read. And I'm glad I did, because this one, the headline that caught me goes like this. It says, quote, "I shared with her that I was a cancer survivor, and the two of us, complete strangers, shared a hug and some tears," end quote. That caught me because like I said, I've dealt with that, interpersonally. So it's just very short. The article goes, a few years ago, I was circling the block to find a parking space so I could get a cup of coffee. A woman walking by flagged me down and said she would go in and get me the coffee if I gave her my order. While she was inside, a spot opened up and I was waiting by my car when she exited. I thanked her when she came out and went to hand her money. She said the coffee was on her. She went on to explain that she had metastatic cancer, and with the time that she had left, she wanted to do as many good deeds as possible. I shared with her that I was a cancer survivor and the two of us, complete strangers, shared a hug and some tears. She asked me to pay it forward as often as possible, and ever since that day, I make sure to do random acts of kindness for others as often as I can. And this was written by Sarah Marcy of Providence, Rhode Island. And I really just thought that was incredibly fucking human. And it really does tie into one of my big lessons that I teach in my personal development content, that is being, if you really want to know what's important, because a lot of us do, a lot of us kind of go through life not knowing what's important, not being able to find what's important, figure out what's important, create what's important. If you really want to know what's important, talk to somebody that's dying. Talk to somebody that is on their deathbed and they all say the exact same fucking thing. The one thing that is most important in life is people. People are what is important. Everything else falls to the wayside. You never hear somebody on their deathbed going, I really wish I would have spent more time away from my family so I could make that extra buck. I really wish I would have spent more time away from my family, my loved ones, or my friends so that I could go do that or do this. Every single dying person all says people are the most important thing in life. And I tend to believe that as well. So the idea that this woman can know that she's dying and only want to spend the rest of her time not feeling resentful, not feeling pity, not feeling sorry for herself, not wallowing in a river of despair and just waiting for her days to end. She got out there and she did what fucking real humans do. They started helping out other humans. Guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for fucking sticking along with this episode. And bye.